Hi everyone. I hope I'm audible. Okay, great. So let me talk about myself. So I'm Shashi and I'm tech lead and mentor at Geeks. Before joining Geeks, I was part of Adobe, and at Adobe I was a full stack developer. Many years in backend, but I worked on front end as well using React. Right. So like I was there for 2 years and I built some application, some web application using Spring and React. And before joining Adobe, I was part of Paytm wallet team. So at Paytm also I worked on Spring and backend mainly, right? So like in this webinar, we'll talk about the full stack, like what is full stack and what are the options for full stack. And then we'll talk about React for the front end and Spring for the back end, right? We'll also talk about the other options like Django for the back end. Then we have Node.js for the back end. Then for the front end, we have option for Angular. We have other framework as well, right? So we'll talk about some of them. Uh, and once we are done with those things, the requirement, the scope, like what is the job scope for full stack developer, and what should be the complete path to learn these things. So we'll talk about all these things, and then I'll show you a demo of a Spring Boot application, like how you can build a web service, the backend of a web service using Spring Boot. We don't have that much time, so I'll not be able to show you the code for React.js because I don't have that much time. So what I'll do is I'll simply show you one simple Spring Boot application, like how we can build from scratch. And yeah, so and I'll talk about the basics of backend, right? So that is the idea of this webinar. Of course, in the end of this webinar, I'll be announcing something regarding our. So we have one online live course for the full stack. So I'll talk about that course as well, and I'll announce one coupon for. So I'll talk about the offers of that course, right? So that is the agenda of this webinar. Okay, so okay, and also you can ask your doubt. So you can ask a question, and I can pick a question from the chat section. So we can make this session interactive. Right. So you can ask your doubts. I'll be taking your doubts, and I'll try to answer your questions. Okay. Okay. So I hope most of the companies are working on web, so they need a backend, they need a front end, so that they can do something, right? So, and it's not only about the front end, back end. Of course, they need some mobile application like iOS and let's say Android application. So of course, these applications interact with the backend service, right? So that's why every company need a backend where they can do the data processing, they can interact with the databases, and they can implement the business logic, right? So that is the main purpose of backend. Like uh, so you will have some APIs which will be accepting the request from the client. Again, the client can be anything. The client can be the front-end application. The client can be other backend service. The client can be Android application, or the client can be iOS application. So the client can be anything, and the backend will expose their APIs to So let's say if you want to get something done, let's say if you want to use a service of a backend, then you will have to call that API, right? So the client will be calling those APIs to get something done, and the backend, the main task of the backend is to implement, some logic to complete that task, right? It can be doing some data processing. It can be interacting with the databases, right? So a lot of things are included in backend. Okay, then we have one thing called front end. So front end means the portion of code which runs in your browser. So normally it will be a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code. Again, we have a lot of frameworks for front end, like we have jQuery, we have Backbone.js, we have React.js, we have Angular.js. We have many many options for the front end, right? But the main purpose of the front end is the UI thing, the user interface thing, and so that the client can easily interact with the backend, right? Okay, so initially the companies used to hire like separate backend developers, then separate front end developers. So they had, in fact, some of the companies still have the profile, like they have separate profile for backend, they have separate profile for front end. But right now, startups, so if you talk about startups, they prefer to hire someone who has an idea about both the things. If someone is working on full stack, so he or she will have better, he or she will have more job options if I compare with the single front end or back end. So yeah, so if I talk about the future, or if I talk about the job scope, the full stack developers have much more scope than other profile. Like, so if you only know backend, then of course you will have lesser options. If you only know front end, then you will have again selected options. If you know full stack, in that case you can apply for both. You can apply for front end, you can apply for back end, and also you can apply for the full stack role, right? So that's why it's better to go with the full stack, so that you can have more job options. Okay. Yeah. And so in the full stack, you'll be doing both the things. You'll be doing front end and you'll be doing back end both, right? So that is the advantage of knowing full stack. If I talk about the options of full stack, there are many, right? So the one good thing about JS is JavaScript is you can build backend and you can build front end both using JavaScript, right? So that's why the React Plus node is very popular. There's no doubt that React in Node.js is very popular for the full stack, and that's why we have the modern stack. So modern stack means it's Mongo, Express, R for React, and N for Node.js, right? So basically, so modern stack is a kind of full stack which is based on React plus Node.js. So that is the one option. And the good thing about that is like you can build the full stack, the complete application using the same language, using the JavaScript, right? But if I talk about the backend thing, right, like Java is known for backend, and a lot of companies are still using Java for their backend. Like when I was part of Paytm, of course, they use Node.js as well for the Paytm Mall, but for the Paytm payments, they use Java only. And there are many companies like Amazon, Expedia, I would say Visa, American Express, and there are many companies who are using Expedia. Again, there are companies like, of course, in Adobe we use Java. So there are a lot of companies who work on Java for the backend thing mainly, right? So that's why if you are going with the Java for the backend, and if you are going with, let's say, React or Angular for the front end, so that will be again a good combination. Because if I talk about, again, the startups are preferring to use modern stack, or they're trying to use React plus Node because it's simpler to use. Because you're using the same language for the full stack, right? You're using the JavaScript for both front end and back end. If I talk about, let's say, React plus Spring, or let's say Angular plus Spring, or let's say React plus Django, in that case you are using JavaScript for the front end, and you are using Java for the back end if you're using Spring, and if you're using Django, then you are using Python for the back end, right? So that's why MERN or Node plus React is easier to learn. But if I talk about the number of job openings, then of course the React plus Spring has the like there are more vacancies for this profile for the React plus Spring, right? Okay, so yeah, so that's why again, all this combination like React plus Node, React plus Django, React plus Java, all these frameworks are popular, and you can learn any of them. My personal choice will be React plus Spring, because again, Java is really strong, and Java is known for the backend application, right? Of course, Node.js is evolving, and in future it might overshadows Java. But right now, like Java and Spring is the main framework for the backend. That's why I'll recommend you to learn Java and Spring for the backend, right? Again, for the front end, you can go with the Angular. Uh, Again, we have another option called you can learn Vue.js. But my personal preference will be React.js because I mean, if you talk about the popularity or if you talk about the use cases, like React.js is little more popular than the AngularJS, right? And again, I have not built something in AngularJS, but I have the basic idea of AngularJS. But so I would say like learning React.js is little easier than learning AngularJS, right? And there are a lot of inbuilt libraries, or I would say there are a lot of inbuilt modules which you can use in your React.js project. So that's why I mean it's better to go with the React if I compare with the Angular or other front-end framework, right? Okay, so this is about I mean the scope and the popularity and all these things about this framework. Again, there's no harm in learning Stack or Node plus React for the full stack, or you can go with the React plus Django. You can learn anything, and there are a lot of companies who are working on these things. Like some companies are using React plus Django for their full stack. Some companies are using Ruby on Rails as well for the backend. So I'm not saying that okay, Java is the only one language for the backend. But if you talk about the most popular, it's still Java. Okay. Uh, yeah. So I'll talk about the complete path for the front end and back end, and then I'll show you the demo. Uh, but in the meantime, I just want to take some questions from your side. Like the one question from Aditya is how much time it takes to learn full stack development. It depends, right? There's nothing like a fixed time, but normally you can learn React in 1 month, and you can learn, let's say, backend in 1 month. So 2 months should be enough to learn the full stack. Again, it depends like how much effort you can put to learn these things. But normally 2 months should be enough to learn this basic thing. Again, if you want to build something really cool, those things might take, let's say, 1 more month, right? So I won't say learning something will be sufficient. You should build something to use them, right? Okay. So building some project might take 1 more month. So it it can take total 3 months. Okay. One question is what about going serverless using Firebase? Yeah. So it's interesting. So in fact, I mean, the good thing about Firebase is, let's say if you are building Android application, or let's say if you're building any front-end application, normally we need a backend so that we can store some data at the backend, or we can, uh, do authentication with the help of backend. But using Firebase, you can directly interact with the database without having a backend, right? Or you can do the authentication using Firebase without having a backend. So that's the cool stuff about Firebase. Uh, yeah, so it's good to know, but still, I think there is a need of backend. Like you can't ignore the backend thing. Of course, you can store data, you can do authentication without having a backend using Firebase. But there are a lot of things that should be done at the backend side. So ideally, we need a backend, to do a lot of things, right? Again, Firebase is good. Like you can build something like Angular, or you can build something on Angular or React or some mobile application like Android or iOS with Firebase. And with Firebase, you can do the authentication. You can store something in the database without having backend. So these things are just for let's say if you don't have that much time to build your backend. In that case, you can use Firebase. But ideally, if you want to make an enterprise application, you need a backend. Like you can't skip that backend thing. Okay. Somil, I could not understand your question. Like thinking. So, do you want to build some startup? Okay. I mean, if you want to build a startup, in that case, of course, you. I mean, you can choose anything. But if you want to scale that startup, in that case, when you will have a good team, you can change your stack as well. So you can start with anything. You can start with the Modern stack. You can start with React plus Java. Um, okay, one question from May is how do we deploy a project with React plus Spring Online, like Heroku or DigitalOcean? Okay, it's not true. So on Heroku, you can see. So we'll have the separate projects for React. We'll have the separate project for Spring, right? So we will not have a single project or single application for both the front end and back end. So we'll have a separate application for the front end, which will be, let's say, which is uh, built using React, and we'll have a separate application using, let's say, Springboard, and we can deploy both these applications on Heroku or on AWS or on Azure or on Google Cloud. We can use any cloud provider services to deploy them. Right. Uh, if you're learning these things for the first time, I will recommend you to try Heroku because it's simple to use. It's not as complicated as AWS. Again, AWS is quite popular, but for simplicity, I would recommend you to go with Heroku. So you can build, I mean, you can deploy your React application separately, and then you can deploy your backend application based on Spring separately, right? And they can communicate with each other. Like the front end will be calling the APIs of backend to get something done, right? So this is how things are deployed in the industry. Okay. Of course, there are many more things, like you will have the load balancer, you will have the API gateway, you will have a lot of other stuff. But of course, you can deploy your simple front end application based on React and simple backend application on AWS or on Heroku. Okay. Let me. Yeah. The one question is from Shumesh, like how it is different from Java backend. Yeah, actually, we have a separate course on Java backend. So actually, that course is specialized for the Java backend development. In that course, we teach them the Springboard, and REST APIs, and Spring Security, Spring Actuator. Then we talk about Redis, Kafka. We talk about microservices. So we talk about the core backend thing, like how you can, like how a backend developer can build something from the scratch, right? So that course is only for the backend. The full stack course, and in the full stack course, we are teaching them the back end using Java, Spring, Spring Security. We are not covering the topics like Redis and Kafka because those things are, I would say, the part of advanced backend. So that those things are not part of the full stack course. Because what I believe is that if you know the basics, and if you know the important things of let's say Spring, that you can learn other things or other modules by yourself. So in the backend, in the full stack course, we don't have some of the topics like Redis and Kafka and microservices. But yes, we have this React. So yeah, the full stack course is for someone who wants to learn the full stack using React plus Java and Spring. The Java backend course is for someone who wants to learn everything about backend. Okay, and you can go through the course page to know the more details, about that course. Okay, yeah. So I'll quickly talk about the path to learn the front end and back end, and then I'll quickly show you a simple demo, like how you can build a Spring Boot application from scratch. Okay. Diksha, no, actually, I mean, actually, initially you can, do some, like, so using JSP, you can build the front end as well. But again, in JSP, you will be using JavaScript. So yeah, you can't build something without using, when you can't build front end without using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because our browsers are not that compatible with other languages. So yes, for the front end, we will have to use the JavaScript. Uh, okay, full stack on GeeksforGeeks is enough for become a good full stack engineer. Yes, I mean you should be good enough to crack the interviews, and you should be good enough to complete any task in your office. So I think yes, you should be like, you will have a good start. Of course, you will have to learn some more thing, but those things can be learned when you will join a company. So after joining the company, you can learn those things. So yes, this course will be sufficient to start your career with full stack, and you will have enough knowledge to crack the interviews if they are asking questions on full stack. Uh, okay, should one go with Django if they want to prepare for hackathons, or maybe also explore ML path in future? Yeah, so the good thing about the Python is you can like build backend using Django if you know Python, and of course you can build some models using AI ML using Python. So that's the good thing about Python. You can do your data science work using Python, and you can build the backend as well. So yes, if you are planning to explore the AI ML path, in that case you should go with the Python and Django only. You definitely have that advantage of working with data science. Yes, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, if you can explore the freelancing jobs, you'll see like, okay, you'll have a lot of, you'll have a lot of work for the full stack. And if you know React and let's say Java backend, then you can easily get a lot of work as a freelancer. Okay, let me quickly talk about the complete path for the for I mean to become a front end developer, and then I'll talk about like how you can start learning backend, and then what are the things that you should learn to be a complete full stack developer. So if I talk about the learning the front end, you should know the basics of HTML, HTML5. You should know CSS. You should know how we can build a simple static website using HTML and CSS. Then you can learn Bootstrap. I mean, it's not compulsory, but yes, you can learn, right? And then you can learn the JavaScript. Again, there are a lot of things in JavaScript. I would say you should know like how we can manipulate the DOM using JavaScript. Then you should know how to like what are the arrow functions in JavaScript, what are the features of ES6, right? Because those things will be used in React or Angular, so you should know those things of JavaScript. So once you are familiar with the basics of JS, then you can start learning one framework. Like it could be Angular, it could be React.js. As I said, my personal choice will be React.js. So again, there are many tutorials on YouTube with the help of which you can start learning React. See, the benefit of joining a course is you'll be learning these things from an industry expert. Like I have worked on these things in the industry. Another instructor who is so like, I mean, he's also working in coordination, so he has also a good knowledge of React and how things work in the industry. So if you're learning from someone who has already worked on those things in the industry, you will have, I mean, you will have the better idea to use them. But again, you can learn those things by yourself as well, right? So you can, I mean, learn some concepts of React. Let's say you can start with how to create a small project in React, and then you can learn about styling React routers. Then you can learn about, let's say, how we can uh, yeah, so then we can learn about let's say MobX or Redux. Then how you can use how you can do state management with Redux. Uh, then how you can integrate tools like Firebase with React, right? So Again, there is no specific path to learn React, but I would say you can explore the topics of React and then you can build something on those topics. Let's say if you're learning Redux, then you can build some sample application using that concept. Or let's say if you're using Firebase with React, then you can do some authentication, or you can build an application to store some data on the Firebase. So you can learn things by building something. In that way, you will have some good projects, and you will have the better understanding of those topics, right? Okay. Yeah. So again, I mean, before learning React.js, you might have to learn Babel. You might have to learn about ES6. You will have to learn about Webpack. You can learn about like how to test React components, right? So yes, I mean, this is the basic idea about the like what should be your path for learning all these things. Again, there's no fixed rule. You can learn these things in any other way as well. Yeah. But again, there's no need of learning, let's say, jQuery, or there's no need of learning Backbone JS if you want to learn React.js, right? Because those things are not useful if you are building something, using React, right? Okay, let's talk about the backend using Java and Spring. So to learn the backend thing, you should know the basics of Java. Basics means you should know how to write if-else condition, for loops, and how to write functions. Then what is class, what is a object, what is an object in Java. Then the basic OOPS concept of Java. Then what are the basic corrections like array list and hash map. Then you should know file handling, exception handling, or the basics of multi-threading, right? Once you are done with all these things, you can start learning Spring. Again, there's no need of learning, let's say, Servlet or JSP, or I would say applets, and then JFX, then Swing, circuit programming. So these things are not useful in the backend. So you can ignore these topics and you can start learning the Spring, the backend thing, right? So again, in Spring, we have multiple things. We have a lot of things in Spring. The one thing is, I would recommend you to start with Spring Boot only, because I mean you can learn Spring with Spring Boot, because in Spring Boot we'll be using a lot of Spring concepts, right? So and again, there are many resources for learning Spring Boot. You can start with the documentation of Spring to start building something based on Spring Boot or Spring, right? And then once you're done with the basics of Spring Boot, you can explore Spring MVC, then you can explore REST APIs, then you can explore Hibernate and JPA, and how you can interact with a database like MySQL, right? Then you can, yeah, then you can, so once you're done with the data access layer, you can explore things like Spring Security, then Spring Cloud, then Spring Actuator. Then you can learn about Redis and Kafka, like how you like how the Redis can, sorry, how Spring Boot application can interact with Redis to store something in the cache. Then you can learn about Kafka, and again, you should be building something with all these things, right? Let's say if you're learning Redis, then you should build something using Redis. Then only you'll be able to understand the use cases of Redis, like why do we really need Redis in the backend. So my recommendation will be learn. I mean, you should learn things while building something. So yeah, so and these things apply everywhere. If you're learning front end or learning back end or learning anything, you should build something while learning all these frameworks or technologies, right? And then once you're done with front end, you're done with back end, then you can uh, I mean, build something. You can build a web application, full-fledged web application, using the front end and back end component, and you can integrate them to complete the application, right? For the help, you can explore the projects on GitHub. So on GitHub, you can find a lot of projects, and with the help of those projects, you can know like, okay, how we can integrate a React in a Spring Boot application. Then you can learn the best coding practices or best coding examples by going through those projects, right? So yeah, so these are the ways to learn all these things. Okay. Uh, Again, I'll take few more questions, then I'll quickly show you the simple Spring Boot application, right? Like how we can build from scratch. So one question is, how much DS and algo is required? So these things are required to crack the interviews, like to learn back end and front end. I don't think you need. So if you know the basics of these things, like what is array, what is a string, what is array list, what is hash map, so those things should be enough. You don't need to know the trees and graph to start learning the front end or back end. So only the basics of base level is sufficient. Okay, let me quickly show you, like how we can build an application from scratch using Springboard, and that will take, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, let me quickly share my screen. Okay, so you can simply go to Spring Initializer. It's a web page where you can, so from this page you can create your sample Spring Boot application, right? So this is start.spring.io. Okay. So I won't take more than 10 minutes to show you like how we can build Spring Boot application in from scratch, right? So I hope, I'll be able to understand this. I'll be able to explain these things easily, right? Before explaining this thing, let me explain the basic terms, like what is the meaning of what is the meaning of uh, request response and API and a web server, right? So let's say when we let me open google.com. Okay. Let's say when we are searching something, like searching on Google, right? So let me quickly. Erase all the other fields. Okay, I can simply write something like this. Say google.com, then as search question mark equal, let's say searching, right? Have the same response. Uh, Search. So if you can see my screen, you can see this URL, which is google.com/search, then question mark you go to searching. So basically I'm searching on Google, right? So this thing is called request, and the request parameter is a word called searching, and this HTML content, which contains some images, some videos, some text. So these things are called response. So we are getting this HTML page from Google server. That's why. So this is the response we are getting from Google. So here browser is the client and google.com is the server, and this thing is the request, and this HTML page is the response. Right. So this is the basic meaning of request, response, and client and server. Right. Uh, and here search is the API. So API is nothing but a function, but a method which will be called by the client. So like here for this function, let's say search is a function, and here the input is searching. That's why we are getting this response as the output. Let's say if I'm changing this word as, let's say I'm changing to pointing, right? Then we'll have a different response, right? So I'm calling the same function, I'm calling the same API, and the request parameter, the input is changed. Now the input is pointing, so I'm getting something else in the response, right? So this search is the, I would say it's like a function, it's like a method, which can expect an input. Like here, the input was pointing in search in, and depending on that input, we are getting something like, we are getting some information as the response, right? So this search is nothing but the API, which is being called by this client, this this Chrome browser client, right? So this is the basic meaning of API. Okay, I hope you are able to understand these things. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, great. Uh, hmm. So now my plan is, let's build something. Let's build a web service like Google, and let's build a. Of course, we can't build something like Google, but let's implement a simple search API similar to Google, right? And let's see how we can expose our API so that client can use them, right? So I'm going to use a Spring. So I have selected. So Maven is a tool. It's a build tool which helps us to do the dependency management. Yes, I'll talk about that those things once you join the course, or you can Google about the Maven project. Like, what is the meaning of Maven? Again, you can use Kotlin, you can use Groovy for building the backend using Spring, but Java is the, it's very common for Spring. That's why I'm using Java. You can go with the 2.3.3. So this is the Spring Boot version. Let's say I'm going with 2.2.9 because I have tested that version. And here, let's say my application name is let's say backend app. So this is simply the name of the application which I'm going to build. So it's a backend app. And let's say I'm going with JDK 8. Of course, you can go with Java 11 or 14 or anyone, but I'm going with JDK 8 only. Uh, let's say I'm going to, since I'm going to build a web service, a web application, that's why I need the dependency of web, right? So I'm going to choose a web dependency from here, right? So I have selected the Spring Web dependency so that I can use the I can build a REST API, right? I can build, and after clicking on this generate button, I'll have a zip file which will have some sample code, right? So basically, with the help of this page, we'll have a very small project with basic structure. So it won't have a lot of code. We'll have to add the code, but it will have the basic, basic files. It will have the basic structure of the project so that we can add few lines of code to get it running and to get it working, right? So you can, yeah, so I have already, downloaded that project, so that's why you can see it's backend app 1.zip. But if you're doing it first time, you'll have simply backend app.zip, right? So the next step is you will have to unzip that folder, and then you'll have to import that unzipped folder to an IDE, right? So IDE means, I mean, you can use Eclipse, you can use IntelliJ. I'm using IntelliJ, right? So, okay, so let's say if I have, okay, so I have already an application here. So let's see how we can import the, a new project in IntelliJ. So what you can do is you can click on the file, you can click on the new button, then you will have the option of project from existing resource. So the idea is we are not building project from the scratch, but we are importing a project because we have downloaded a sample project from that Spring initializer page. So we are going to import that project in that IntelliJ IDE so that we can add some code and we can uh, build something, right? So actually, I have already, see, I mean, that backend app is already there in my test projects folder. So to import that project, you will have to select the pom.xml file. So you will have a pom.xml file already in that folder. You just need to select that pom.xml, and then you will have to click on OK button, and then you'll have to click some more some next buttons, and then you will be done with importing this project, right? So of course you can Google like how to import a sample Spring Boot application in IntelliJ, or let's say if you're using Eclipse, then you can Google about that thing as well, right? So I don't think it's the biggest step. So I have already done that importing thing, so I'm not going to show like how to import that thing, right? So yeah, so I have already imported that project, okay, and I have not added any code in this folder. So all these things are already there, right? So one thing that you can do is you can simply build this project. So build means like this project has a dependency of web. So the Maven will download that dependency when we are building that project. So that is the meaning of building. Building is basically it's similar to compiling a Java program, right? And again, so when you will have this sample application, you will have you you already will have this file called backend. So again, the name can change. Like the name of my application was backend app, that's why the name of this class is backend app application. This name can change if your project has some different name, right? So yeah, so this thing was already there. I have not written this code, it was already there, and it has a main method. So I can run this code, right? I can simply run. I can simply run this application from here. Actually, I mean currently we don't have anything, so it won't do, like we are not doing anything, so it won't do anything, right? So let's say if you want to build, or let's say if you want to create an API like search, in that case I'll have to write some code so that our web service can expose an API like search API, right? So I'm going to write some code for that search API, right? So I'm going to create one more class. Let's say that class is, let's say the name of the class is controller. Again, you can rename this class. The name is not that important, but normally uh, the class which will be responsible for which will be responsible for accepting the request, its name should be similar to controller or resource or something. I'll talk about the naming conventions later if I'll have the time. So I'll have to use one thing called REST controller. That means, okay, in this class we are going to write some APIs. Then let me write a simple hi API, and then I'll implement the search API. Let's say I have a simple get mapping. Let's say the path is hi, and let's say what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement a simple method called, let's say we have a simple method called say hello, and this method will be called if someone is simply calling that hi API. So and I'm accepting nothing in the request, and what I can do is I can simply return a string, like let's say hello coders, right? So we have implemented a simple API, and what we are doing is so let's say if a client will hit this hi API, the client will get this string hello coders as a response. So let me show you. So to run the application, you will have to run this main method of this class, right? I think we are done with the, so you can see like, okay, the Tomcat has started. Actually, in Spring Boot, we'll have the inbuilt Tomcat. So we don't need to install Tomcat separately. And our application is running on port number 8080, right? So let me test this simple hi API. from my browser. Right. So I can, yeah. So you can see I'm hitting, this. I'm calling that API hi and I'm getting that response called hello products, right? So it's a simple API, right? Let's write an API similar to search API. Okay, it looks like some of you are there. Great. Okay, let me quickly show you like how we can implement a search API. So what I can do is I can simply write something like this. Let's say gate mapping. So this gate mapping is for the gate API. Of course, you can explore like what is the meaning of a gate API. But normally when we want to get something from the server, we call the gate API. So let's say we have API called search. Right. Uh, okay. Again, in this API also we are returning a string. Method name is search something. Okay. In the input of this request, we are accepting, let's say, a string. Like let's say I'm expecting a query parameter, right? So what we can use is we can have that this parameter field. Okay, so if you remember, if you can remember this, this key is called query parameter. So it's a part of request. It's called request parameter, but we are searching something that's why it's called query parameter, right? So I'm going to implement an API something like this. That's why I need a string q in the, and so basically when the client will hit our API, that input string will be captured within this queue, right? So what I'm going to do is, let's say we have another class called database. Again, we are not using real database like MySQL or something. I'm going to use something like, let's say, hash map to store something. So let's say we have a class called uh, database DB. So it's a just to simulate the function of DB. I'm not using the real DB. I'm simply using a hash map to store some data about some words. And so let's say we have a hash map. Again, we can simply get a hash map. Let's say here the key is a string and value is also a string. So the idea is I'll be storing my information, let's say about some information about Sachin or any word in this hash map only. So let's say it is called, let's say, a simple table or something. Let's say the table new. It's data table or something. So let's say it's a storage. It's storage. It's a simple hash map, right? In the constructor, I'm simply initializing uh, initializing this storage, this hash map with some words, right? So let's say uh, I'm simply putting, let's say I'm putting something about Sachin. So let's say Sachin. Let's say the value of Sachin is, so Sachin is a key for this hash map, and in the value, let's say I'm putting some words about Sachin. Let's say like a great batsman, right? Let's say I'm going to store Ponting, right? Okay, great captain. Okay, looks like missing. basically, I have two. I have information about two words. One is search and one is content, right? And let's say I have one method called search, which is a public method, and I'm simply returning a string about that word. So basically, this search method will be called when I want to search a word from the storage. Let's say it's a word. The simple idea is I'll simply, get from the storage, which is a hash map, and return the, the details of that word. It will be stored as a value in the hash map. It's as simple as that, right? On the controller, what I'll do is I'll create an object of database. Right. And then I'll simply call the search method of that database, and the input will be that that query parameter which we are getting from the request. So let me simply run this application. So like, okay, show you like how this is working. Let me rerun this application. So okay, it's running now. So let me try to hit that API. It will be in search. Let's say it should be capital. Let me it looks like I missed something. Request header. Okay. Get mapping search. Then we have this. Okay, let me quickly check that high API. Okay, and we should go with the HTTP only. It was HTTPS. That was the reason of failure. And now let me hit that search API. Search equal to, let's say, searching. Search the spelling of search. So we got the response, which is get back. Yes, if I'm changing searching to pointing, we'll have a different response. See, I mean, if I'm passing a another word, then we are getting null because there's no word in the hash map. That's why we are getting null as a response. So it should be. Yeah, so this is how we can. I mean, this is how simple to create, a backend API using Spring in Springboard, right? We just need to write some few lines of code. Of course, we need to write some more code to interact with the real database, but again, things are inbuilt. So let's say if you want to interact with MySQL, or let's say if you want to interact with any other database or any other service, you don't need to write more than 10 lines of code because things are inbuilt. So yeah, so this is this is how we can create some application using Springboard for the backend. Right. I don't have that much time to yeah, I don't have that much time to show you the code for let's say React and other things as well. But yeah, this is the very basic thing, like okay, how you can build things from scratch, and and uh, you just need to install JDK on your machine. If you have Maven, that's great. In fact, with IntelliJ inbuilt Maven is already there, so you don't need to install Maven to build these things, right? So yes, so you can start building backend using Spring in this way. Yeah, so I'll take few questions and then. Okay, the one announcement is that like our team will share a link for the Google form. Okay, and once you're done with filling that form, so our course counselor will contact you, and he will help you if you want to join our courses, right? And you'll have like you can, I mean, they will tell about you the offers that we have. Okay, so you can fill that Google form to uh, you know to know more about our courses and to know about the offers that we have for the for the full stack course. Okay, the one question is Spring Boot necessary for full stack? uh, so Spring Boot is one way of building backend, right? So you can use Node.js, you can use Django, you can use Ruby on Rails. So there are many options for backend. Spring Boot is one of them. Okay. Yeah, actually, we will cover. Sorry, we'll share that that Google form in the video description as well. So you can grab that link from there. I mean, if you want to know more about our courses, right? Will you cover the basics of React? Yes, we'll be covering the basics of React. So the idea of this course is uh, to help them to learn things from scratch, right? So yes, we'll be covering the basics of everything, the basics of React, the basics of Spring Boot. So you don't need to know anything about React to join this course. So I'm almost done. I'll take one last question. Okay, so you know the basics of Java. Like you should know how to write simple if-else in Java. You should know how to write, let's say, functions in Java. So the basic knowledge of Java is compulsory. And I don't think that thing will take much time because you can learn the basics of Java in, let's say, in 2 or 3 days, right? Okay, one last question from my side is okay. Do we also need to know about microservices in Java full stack and how much time we should take to learn basic things to become full stack? Again, I can't quantify the time, but I would say 2 or 3 months should be enough to learn the full stack. Okay, yes, I'm done. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to ask some more questions. I'll be happy to help you if I can help you in any way. So I'm sorry if I could not take your question because I mean I got a lot of questions, so it was not possible to take all the questions and answer all of them. So you can ping me on LinkedIn if you have some more questions to ask. Okay. Okay then. Thank you. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the session. Yeah, so we can. I mean, I can conduct some more workshop on, let's say, front end and back end if you want me to conduct some more webinars. I can do some workshop on React. I can do some workshop on, let's say, advanced Java. So if you want me to do some more workshop, then you can let me know. I'll do those things. Okay then. Thank you.